Ghost University. In this video, you'll see G. Edward Griffin interview Norman Dodd. In my original intro video, I showed a list of top 10 books. The second book on the list was called Foundations, Their Power and Influence, and the author is Renee Wormser. Mr. Dodd was the director of research for the Reese Committee who investigated foundations to find out if they would use their money and power and influence to subvert American ideals such as the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and the Constitution. He also became a member of a bank, Morgan Bank in New York, many years ago, around 1930 or so. And he found out that through his research that banking wasn't sound, and he brought that to the attention of the people who owned Morgan Bank. And they told him we were never going back to sound banking ever again. In fact, they were involved in institutionalizing conflicting interests in banking. So I'll let Mr. Dodd go ahead with the story and look out for the things that I just told you about sound banking and how we found out foundations were indeed involved in subverting American ideals.
The story you are about to hear represents a missing piece in the puzzle of modern history. Without this knowledge, many contemporary events are simply beyond understanding.
The word contemporary, I'm going to define. Contemporary, in the way he's using it, really means belonging to or occurring in the present. That's why he said many modern things that are happening now cannot be understood unless you understand what happened in the past. You know, the past will give you a much better understanding of the things that are occurring now once you begin to understand what you're looking at and understand worldviews and perception and ideologies, as well as what people understand and the things that they don't understand. You can be more easily controlled if you don't understand what's being told to you or understand why these things are being told to you.
You are about to hear a man tell you that the major tax-exempt foundations of this land, since at least 1945, have been operating to promote a hidden agenda. And that agenda has nothing to do with the surface appearance of charity, good works, or philanthropy. This man will tell you that the real objectives include the creation of a worldwide collectivist state, including the Soviet Union, which is to be ruled from behind the scenes by those same interests which now control the tax-exempt foundations. The man who tells this story is none other than Mr. Norman Dodd, who in 1954 was the staff director of the Congressional Special Committee to investigate tax-exempt foundations, sometimes referred to as the Reese Committee, in recognition of its chairman, Congressman Carroll Reese. The interview you are about to see was conducted by me in 1982. I had no immediate use for the material at that time, but I realized that Mr. Dodd's story was of extreme importance, and since he was advanced in age and not in good health, I simply wanted to capture his recollections on videotape while he was still with us. It was a wise decision because Mr. Dodd did pass away just a short time afterward.
Sometimes people say, you just know. As Edwin Griffin said, he just felt like Mr. Dodd's testimony would be important. He knew it would be important based upon things that he's already aware of. You know, not maybe 100%. You just know. But just knowing most of the time doesn't really mean that. It means you have investigated and researched and understand the things you're looking at in society or in your own life that you know what's happening. You know, just knowing involves experience, not just knowing.
In recent months, there has been a resurgence of interest in the substance of Mr. Dodd's story, and we have decided to make it available to the general public. And so what now follows is the full, unedited interview, broken occasionally only for a tape change or to omit the sound of a passing airplane. It stands on its own as an important piece in the puzzle of modern history. Mr. Dodd, let's begin this interview by a brief statement for the record, telling us who you are, what your background is, and your qualifications to speak on this subject.
Well, Mr. Griffin, as for who I am just, as the name implies, an individual born in New Jersey and educated in private schools, eventually in a school called Andover, Massachusetts, and then Yale University, and running through my whole period of being brought up and growing up, I have been an indefatigable reader, and I have had one major interest, and that was this country, as I was led to believe it was originally founded. And I entered the world of business knowing absolutely nothing about how that world operated, and realized that the only way to find out what that world was consisted of would be to become part of it. And I then acquired some experience in the manufacturing world, and then in the world of international communication, and finally chose banking as the field I wished to devote my life to. And I was fortunate enough to secure a position in one of the important banks in New York, and lived there. I lived through the conditions which led up to what is known as the crash of 1929, and I witnessed what is tantamount to a collapse of the structure of the United States as a whole. And much to my surprise, I was confronted by my superiors with in the middle of the panic in which they were immersed, I was confronted with the question, Norm, what do we do now?
The men who confronted Dodd already knew what the answer to their question was. They wanted to see what kind of answer he would give. They wanted to know whether he was going to be a company man, or would he try and be more truthful about why the country is going through the crash of 1929 and the recession of 1929 like it was going through. And you'll see what Mr. Dodd's answer was.
I was 30 at the time, and I had no more right to have an answer to that question than the man in the moon. However, I did manage to say to my superiors, gentlemen, you take this experience as proof of something that you do not know about banking, and you better go find out what that something is and act accordingly. 4 days later, I was confronted by the same superiors with a statement to the effect that, Norm, you go find out. And I really was fool enough to accept that assignment, because it meant that you were going out to search for something and nobody could tell you what you were looking for. But I felt so strongly on the subject that I consented to. I was relieved of all normal duties inside the bank. And 2.5 years later, I felt that it was possible to report back to those who had given me this assignment.
As Mr. Dodd already said, he was what people call he didn't say this, but he was what's called a polymath. And a polymath is a person who wants to know everything that they can possibly know. All right? You're going to study science. You're going to study math. You're going to study physics. You're going to study biology. You may be interested in textiles. You may be interested in gardening. You may be interested in the animal kingdom. You may be interested in all the different religions of the world. You may be interested in the occult. And so he wasn't bothered by the idea that he was going to go look for why banking isn't working properly and what's happening to the country. He was interested in that. Remember, he already said that one of his main interests was America. And I'm sure he wanted to protect America. He kind of said that too. And keep America's foundation intact the best he could. The problem is, are the people who surround you interested in the same things that you are? Let's see what Mr. Dodd found out.
And so I rendered such a report, and as a result of the report I rendered, I was told the following: Norm, what you're saying is we should return to sound banking. And I said, yes, in essence, that's exactly what I'm saying. Whereupon I got my first shock, which was a statement from them to this effect: we will never see sound banking in the United States again.
So, Mr. Dodd said they told him, based upon his report, you recommend we go back to sound banking. Well, they told him, we're never doing that. And in fact, we're never going to do it again. Sound banking had been a thing in America before. In fact, it started around 1792, not started, but in around 1792, there was a coinage act where it was said America would use gold and silver coin, as the U.S. Mint was created in 1792. All right, so I'm going to show you guys that here in this article, and then you can go read the rest on your own. This came from the U.S. Money Reserve, America's Gold Authority. That's usmoneyreserve.com. And here we see, when did the U.S. go off the silver standard? Because silver standard was considered sound banking. How about that? And so eventually what America did was we decided to go off of gold and silver coin and go into debt. And the debt that we pay on money that we borrow from the Fed can never be paid back. So now we're stuck in this vicious cycle of paying this money back to the Fed. Also, I'm going to show you guys that there was an executive order from the president in 1933 that read, on or before May 1st, 1933, all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates now owned by them to a Federal Reserve Bank. People had to deliver their coin, their bullion, and their gold certificates to a Federal Reserve Bank branch or agency, or to any member bank of the Federal Reserve System. That's why we don't have gold and silver coin to this day. And by the way, the Federal Reserve was started in 1913. All right. So Mr. Dodd gave a whole lot of information there within the first 10 minutes of the video. Me talking made it longer, but he did that in 10 minutes. So Mr. Dodd has some more things in store for us to all learn from and take note of, and I'm going to let him continue the talk.